life kind of feels like I'm playing it on solo mode now that I'm in my 20s, and I kind of felt this way the moment after I graduated high school. It felt like everything began to shift, and it's kind of felt like as I've just kind of gotten a little bit older, and I feel like I kind of see this all the way up to the time you're about 25, there's really only like two paths, and you have to kind of accept one of them. Like, it's your decision on which one you're going to choose, but it felt like life has shifted so much in the last few years, and not necessarily in a bad way. I was actually talking with a friend just the other day about this. I'll throw up a screenshot of the conversation we were having on Instagram from just the other day, and I just asked him, I was like, man, besides work and like hanging out with Tati, which is his girlfriend, by the way, I was like, besides, you know, doing that stuff, like, do you do anything anymore? And he was like, honestly, man, nah, like, I just work, I come home, I chill with her, and that's really about it. And he said something that was so interesting. He said it felt like when we were younger, there was like a move every day, like something to go do, something to go spend time on. Like, if I'm being honest with you, when I was in high school, like my senior year, we did so little. There were days where I would just skip class and we'd go to the rec center and play basketball with, you know, like 40-year-old dudes that were there. Like, you just had such a little amount of responsibility, and it feels like a lot of that has began to shift, but not even just in responsibility, but also in terms of priority and when you're choosing one of those two paths. And so when I look at my boys, like the guy, the screenshot I just showed you, his name's Jakai, he's locked in, he's like going for a CDL and stuff like that, then he's also working and all this different type of stuff. It feels like there's like a separation that's going on. This is something I've actually talked about in a couple of my short form videos, like on Instagram. If you don't know, I post on there like all the time. And actually, one of my most popular videos, I think it has like 4.5 million views. One of the things that I talk about in that video is the fact that there's like this great, I guess you could call it a male filter. I've heard it talked about that way before by this YouTuber named First Man. This is years ago, but I call it like the great separation. It's like this time period from the time you're like 18 to 22, more like 25, where you're gonna kind of decide which path that you're on in life. And so you have the first road that's very instant gratification led, and I feel like because you and I are on Christ-focused self-improvement, or I'm assuming because you're still watching this video, you're probably following God to some level, right? Maybe you're new, maybe you've been Christian your whole life, but I mean, that's what I teach, right? That's what I talk about in this channel all the time, is Christ-focused self-improvement. And so the first path is a lot of the like hookup culture. You're going and you're partying and going to clubs because you're young, you only live once, right? This is where a lot of the mindsets come from, like, oh, just date, man, you're supposed to have fun, you're supposed to go out and meet people. Oh, you only live once, right? Like, once you get married, you're settling down, life's kind of like over. You need to have fun while you're in your 20s. Your 20s will be the best years of your life. And then you have path number two, where everyone is kind of locked in. This is the people that are going to the gym all the time, they're eating right, they're staying away from alcohol, they're growing their relationship with God, they're stepping into their career, they're finishing school, they're going hard at that, they're building their business, growing on social media, whatever it is. I'm just giving a bunch of different examples, right? My friend Jakai's perfect example of this. He's killing it. And I think you can really tell if you're on this second path, the latter path, when being locked in, as people call it, right? When you talk about being consistent in the gym or on your nutrition or on your spiritual side of everything, or just self-improvement in general, your business, anything, is when being locked in, right? Being consistent feels normal to you. I feel like if that's where you're at, that's when you probably know, okay, like, I'm definitely walking on this path. And it's definitely a less common path. And if I'm being fully honest with you, for a while, it kind of made me a bit insecure to be on this, because it felt like I wasn't experiencing life, right? Like, I wasn't living, right? And I'm not even just talking about sin. It just kind of feels like a lot of times I was using almost my business and my self-improvement, and the fact that I was busy trying to grow myself, as an excuse to not go do fun stuff, like even just going to the beach or going fishing, you know, just really simple stuff. Let's just be real, like, our generation, it's pretty cooked, right? It's not the best. And so it can be harder to really even meet women if you're not the guy going to the parties or going out to the bars or going out to the clubs, because that's what most young people do, right? That is kind of like the broad path. That's the first walk that I was talking about. And so if I'm being honest with you, up until pretty recently, that brought me a lot of insecurity almost. Like, it was like, man, I'm grinding for this stuff, but you're not really seeing the results. You're not really seeing the fruits. And by that, I mean, like, I guess you're not really getting the attention that a lot of other dudes would be getting, and they're kind of doing the bad habits, right? So it almost feels like you're almost being like punished a little bit for being locked in. It's weird. And see, what finally clicked for me was probably right around June or July of this year, is the fact that, like, I lost all of those feelings of almost like FOMO, in a sense, like fear of missing out. Once I realized, like, the women I wanted to meet, the people I wanted to be friends with, and the experiences I wanted to have, I wasn't going to get by walking that first path, right? Like, if I was out doing the stuff that all the other people were doing, well, then I'm going to get the same results that they wanted, and those aren't the results that I want. It was like, once it finally clicked in my brain that there's like two levels of life, right? That guy First Man, and years ago he talked about in the video, there's like the other side of male life, is what he calls it. When you start to get clear on your goals, what you'll start to realize is a lot of people's idea of fun is very inexpensive or cheap dopamine fun. Things like pornography, things like going out to the bar and getting plastered, things like strip clubs or clubs in general. Like that's the idea of fun. Friday or Saturday night, man, you got done with work, you didn't really enjoy work, let's go get plastered at the bar, that kind of stuff, right? Like hookup culture, that would be like most people's epitome of fun. Maybe they go on a vacation maybe once a year, and like that part's not bad. It's like the only intent of the vacation is just to get plastered. I know people like this. Like there's people, honestly, in my family that are like this. It's not what I want, right? I think about, like, most of my goals are pretty long term. I think about myself 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years, 20 years from now. And I think about, where do I want my physical health to be? What type of shape do I want to be in 5 years from now? Or I think about how you want to, like me personally, right? I don't know exactly where you're at, but you're probably somewhere similar to me, where it's like, you want the beautiful feminine wife, you want to have kids, you want to have a family. That's where you want to be. Maybe for you, it's, I want to be financially free so that I can have property, I can be on land. Maybe it's, I want to be on the beach somewhere in Florida or Puerto Rico or Hawaii, right? Maybe that's what you want. Whatever your goal is, right? Whatever vision you see for yourself, what you'll quickly realize, or at least what I quickly realized, is life from 18 to 25 is probably going to have to be a bit boring, I guess you could say, because it's the repetition and just staying consistent of going to the gym day in and day out, eating right day in, day out, getting up early, praying, reading the word, then working on your business or working on your career or studying even when you don't feel like it, and doing that over and over again. This is the spiritual law of sowing and reaping, right? If you sow long enough, eventually you're going to reap a giant harvest. I guess the thing I was waiting on for so long was for someone to tell me that I was doing the right thing, but I just kind of realized it. There's this level I want to get to, this other side of male life, if you want to call it that, and it's like 18 to 25 is the decision time. It's the period, it's the timeline in everyone's life, every man's life, in which you're going to decide, are you going to be the type of man who takes path 1 or takes path 2? There's this quote from the business guy Alex Ramosi where he says something along the lines of, you only have 2 options. You can either be a overlived, underskilled 30-year-old, meaning you spent your 20s living and having fun, that's path 1, or you can be an underlived, overskilled 30-year-old. You have to choose one, and you can only make the decision once because you only get one shot in life. And so I asked myself that, like, I read that post, I was like, wow, that's really good. I sat and I thought about it. I was like, would I rather be the guy who's got a bunch of stories from his 20s of getting drunk and doing all this, stuff, but now I'm working from behind financially or trying to find a wife, or spiritually, because obviously there's no way that you can go do that stuff and it's not going to have some type of effect on your spiritual walk, of course. And obviously before anything, before my business or anything, my walk with God is the most important. But I look at that, I look at the life I want to get to, and I realize, yeah, I want to be the underlived 30-year-old that's overskilled, that's able to get to where he wants to go. And so I guess I'm really just making this video for the dudes that are also like 18 to 25. Maybe it's even a bit older. Maybe it's leading up to like 28. You're doing the right things. If you're going to the gym and you're eating right and you're prioritizing your spiritual life and you're developing yourself as a man, you're on Christ-focused self-improvement, you're building that business, you're working overtime, you're working hard for that degree so that you can get yourself set up, you're doing great, right? Like if you're doing the compound interest, I believe it was Albert Einstein who talked about this. I'm pretty sure it's him that talked about it. That compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. And so if you think about it, it's like there might not be a big gap right now when you're 20 years old and you have these other dudes that are out doing kind of like the degenerate stuff, because they can also go to the gym and you guys will still look about the same physique. In fact, they'll probably get more attention from just women in general because they're out doing that stuff. And it'll feel like there's not really many differences, but you have to kind of look at it on the longer timeline. What's it going to be like 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 7 years from now? How is your life going to be affected by the fact that you grinded on your business, or you just started reading more, right? And you just started developing yourself intellectually or improving your relationship with God? Imagine how much more that compound effect is going to take effect 5 years from now. Does that make sense? And the internet certainly doesn't help with this, because then you see 17-year-olds that made, $8 million off a crypto coin. In fact, I know a guy who did that. And so he was 18 years old, moved to Miami, and was driving in a Lambo and such. And that will kind of throw like a loop to your mind, like, what is going on with this? Am I doing something wrong? But you're not. Like, I promise you, you're not. If you're doing this stuff day in and day out, you're on the right path. And you just really have to ask yourself, like, what are my bigger goals? Is it the family? Is it the happy marriage, right? Is it having a great physique? I mean, one of the reasons I think I even am pretty consistent in the gym now, like I'm now properly in my first bulk for about 7-8 months now. I think one of the reasons I've been able to stay consistent with it is because I'm thinking about me in the future. How do I want to be? How do I want my kids to perceive me? I want to be in shape for my future wife when I'm married, right? Those are the types of things that are going through my mind. And so I I guess I just started to sit down and ask myself, I have this list of goals, right? This is the car I want to drive, the type of place I want to live, the people I want to help, the business I want to build, the way I want to look, the relationship I want to have, the family I want to build, the legacy I want to leave, right? I started to ask myself this stuff, and I'm like, all right, this is what I want. This is what it's going to cost. I'm going to have to sacrifice this and this and this. Am I willing to pay that? And the answer was yes. And then the second part to that question is, if we come up short of this and we just do this and this and this, and I don't go after this, and I don't try and build this business, and I'm not disciplined in my physique, and maybe my marriage actually isn't that good because I don't prioritize growing with God so I can love her as Christ intended, right? Because as husbands, we're called to die to ourselves and love our wives as Christ loved the church, right? Which means being willing to die. And the answer for me was no. Like, I want to achieve this, right? Like, I want to get to that level of my purpose. I want to get to that level of my business. I want to get to that level of my physique and improve myself enough so I can be a weapon for God, so that I can be helpful for the people that are in my life later down the line. Does that make sense? And of course, I wouldn't want you to use this as an excuse to not go out or not ever be social or not go do anything, right? That was the spot that I was talking about in the beginning of the video where I was a little guilty of that. And now, like, I'll still go out to the movies. I'll go, I don't know, mini golfing, bowling, fishing. I'll go do something, right? I'll go to the beach. I'll still get out and do stuff. But like, I think about myself where I want to be 5-10 years from now, and I want to be the guy who's successful and has all this stuff. And maybe he goes out on a Friday to a really nice fancy restaurant with his wife, and they have you have a real romantic dinner, and you go home, and then you're back up on Saturday morning at 7 a.m. to hit the gym, right? Like, that's where I want to be, you know? And that's not possible when I'm walking the first path, when I'm trying to eat from that and then still be on the second one. Does that make sense? So I guess I'm just making this video that when you're playing life on solo mode, it's difficult because it feels like no one else is doing it, right? It feels like there's not really anyone else who's locked in the way you're locked in, who's trying to build a business the way you are, or trying to grow in whatever area the way you are. And so it feels like it's solo mode, but you're not. It's just temporary. It's an opportunity to grow. It's almost like the isolation allows you to really prioritize your walk with God and step into the type of man that God wanted you to become. And I think that ends up being so powerful. Like, just the other day, I made a video where I was talking about how you really shouldn't be trying to seek a woman. Like, in my experience, I haven't really been trying to seek that. I've really just been seeking the kingdom of God and really focusing on my purpose. And it feels like I've met the type of women that I wanted to meet through that type of thing. And I think it's pretty much the same way. It's like, if you're on this stuff, man, imagine who you'll be 5 years from now. Imagine who you'll be even like 2-3 years from now, a year from now. But then even think about the compound interest on that of you 10 years from now. Let's say you're 22, right? Let's imagine you 10 years from now, you're 32 years old. Imagine the places that you can be in, the life that you could have. And so I'm not doing the wrong things. You're not doing the wrong things. You just need to stay locked in and understand that it's a process. It's a season. And I promise you, if you stick to it and stay consistent, you're going to get to a level that most people, everybody wants to be rich. Everybody wants to be in shape. Everybody wants to have a happy, healthy relationship. Everybody wants a beautiful feminine wife. Everybody wants this stuff, right? Everyone says, oh, I would love to have a better relationship with God. The question comes down to who's actually going to sow into it. And so I'm telling you, if you're walking the second path and it feels like you're playing life on solo mode right now, you're okay. You're doing great. Just stay close to God and keep growing, bro. I'm trying to just speak some life into you. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 and 6 says to lean not on your own understanding. The Lord will guide your footsteps, the path that you walk. If you just stay submitted and then you just stay on the grind, I promise you, it's going to work out for you. But I hope this kind of blesses you. Christ-focused self-improvement is what I teach. Down in the description below, I'll leave a link to the King's Hall, our private community. January 12th, I'm going to be hosting a free webinar on how you can conquer lust, because that typically is the biggest struggle that most Christian men have. So down in the description, I'll link that. It's 100% free. Like, you can just sign up. It's going to ask for your name, email, and number, and that's just so that I can actually send you the invite on January 12th. But I hope this video blesses you. Subscribe, like, and I will see you in the next video. Be blessed, brother.